Hey everyone, welcome to today's episode. It is June 19th. Happy Friday. It is Friday. Top stories today: Iran closes strait as Israel bombs Lebanon, and election rigging in Utah. Iran is behaving as expected with last-minute demands in the ceasefire deal and closing the Strait of Hormuz after traffic resumed to nearly normal levels there today. So this is the thing everybody expected, is Iran is behaving as expected. Why is that? Is because this is what they do in negotiations. They agree to a negotiation principle, framework, what have you. And then as we move forward, they keep changing the deal and asking for more and getting more. And so basically what happened is they put Lebanon on the table, put the proxies on the table. When we took the proxies off the table, we wanted them to stop funding proxies. We took that off the table. We took missiles off the table. And so last minute, they said, no, the deal includes Lebanon if Israel strikes Lebanon, and Israel is not even part of the peace deal. It has nothing to do with Israel as far as we're concerned. And They wanted part of the deal now. And so what they've done is, because Israel, and we're going to get to this lead story in just a minute, has attacked Lebanon again. And there was no indication from Bibi or Israel that they would be stopping the hostilities against Hezbollah. 29 headlines to get through today in the next hour or so, hopefully less. It is Friday, so there's plenty to do before the weekend as we prepare for the weekend. And so without further ado, let's read the headlines. All right, we're going to start with the Associated Press. Talks between the U.S. and Iran are called off because of fighting in Lebanon, officials say. This is from the Associated Press. So we knew this was going to happen. Everybody knew this was going to happen because that's the way Iran behaves. And that's why Trump said he's not going to Switzerland. He signed the deal anyway when he was at the G7. And J.D. Vance was on the tarmac, ready to go to Switzerland. And when they heard what was happening, they heard from Israel that we're not going to stop bombing. But there was also a release from a statement from the supreme leader of Iran that really wasn't that encouraging. Like I said before, I thought there should have been continued bombing for 6 weeks. And I know Trump is looking for an exit ramp. And now we're kind of in a pickle because what are we going to do? Restart hostilities? The blockade shouldn't have been lifted. Central Command said they lifted it. There's some indication that it wasn't fully lifted, that we're still tracking cargo ships, not oil tankers, but cargo ships that were waiting to go into Iran, specifically from China, and we weren't letting those ships through. Getting back to the AP story, Israel's military struck targets in southern Lebanon and eastern Lebanon overnight, and Hezbollah reported intense fighting. Lebanon's health ministry said that at least 21 people were killed, and Israel said 4 soldiers died. So actually, fighting intensified there overnight. That's why J.D. Vance stayed on the tarmac. That's why the Iranian delegation didn't fly to Switzerland. And so we were waiting to see if that was actually going to happen. It didn't look like it was going to happen Two News of Nevada says Vance delays trip to Switzerland to lead new U.S. talks with Iran on its nuclear program. The White House says Vice President J.D. Vance is delaying his trip to Switzerland to lead nuclear negotiations with Iran. They're not up on the news. But good news here from the AFP: oil tankers pass Hormuz Strait after war deal. The tracker. I'm not going to show you the tracker. So for about 12, 16 hours, the strait was fully open. There were no attacks on ships, and everybody was sailing out. But now the announcement comes that the strait is closed from Iran. So the point was to get the strait open. If the strait's not open, they're using it as leverage. That's the only leverage they have. I don't understand. Like I said, they should have kept bombing. The B-52s should be in the air. Something about that B-52 crash in California, there was some speculation that the Chinese have electronic weaponry that can disable aircraft in flight. Apparently, over the South China Sea, U.S. Navy jet crashed because it was disabled, as well as a Navy helicopter. We don't know if there's any truth to this matter, whether it was those type of technologies were used on the B-52. That's all speculative at this point. Just the News article number 4, Iran Supreme Leader Khamenei vows to resist excessive demands from the U.S. in future negotiations. So they think they're on top. Like I said, time was on the side of Iran. I don't think we should have ceased hostilities so early. That's just my thing. New York Post: Iran declares the Strait of Hormuz closed again after U.S. lifts blockade. Iran reclosed the Strait of Hormuz Friday instead of coming to Switzerland to engage in nuclear negotiations, citing Israel's refusal to leave Lebanon and U.S. forces' ongoing presence in the region. So their demands were the United States has to leave the Middle East. That was their demand. Ridiculous demand, considering they don't have any leverage except closing the Strait of Hormuz. And ordering Israel out of Lebanon was just as futile, because Israel launched this whole escapade because of October 7th. Don't piss Mark Levin off by saying anything bad about maybe Israel allowed October 7th to happen to give the pretext and the justification of launching this massive assault on, not just on Hamas and Gaza, but on Hezbollah and Iran, etc., all their enemies, their last enemies there in the Middle East. Story goes on to say, in a statement read over maritime radio channels, the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps said the U.S. was in violation of the Memorandum of Understanding between the two countries. Since Israel's withdrawal from Lebanon, the complete lifting of the blockade, and the withdrawal of American terrorist forces from the Persian Gulf and the region are among the main conditions of agreement between Iran and the United States, the Strait of Hormuz will remain closed until these conditions are met. All ships are requested, for the sake of their security and safety, not to approach the Strait of Hormuz. Any vessel that defies the directive will be targeted. So the conditions that Iran are speaking about is specifically that the U.S. forces were going to leave the region. Now, what's going on with this specifically is that the United States agreed to some of these terms, provided, and knowing farewell, that Iran was not going to comply. The memorandum of agreement doesn't say we're going to leave the Persian Gulf just because you open the Strait of Hormuz. If you open the Strait of Hormuz, we'll lift a blockade. All the other conditions are subject to negotiation and compliance with other demands. So if you thought that we're going to sign the deal and pack up shop and head home, that's just not going to happen. There's no way that that's happening. And I don't know. And this is the way Iran negotiates. They have in their heads crazy idea of what's going to happen. So, and of course, safe phasing measures and making public statements about what they're demanding. They don't have any demands. They don't really have any leverage except shooting at commercial shipping, which is terrorism. And that's what makes it so rich. They're calling the Americans terrorists. I mean, I guess that's subjective. Just the news, Witkoff, Iran will invite UN to inspect nuclear sites, according to the AP. I don't know if that's true. Trump special envoy Steve Witkoff reportedly told lawmakers on Thursday that Iran would soon invite United Nations nuclear inspectors to review its operations and assist with the unearthing of nuclear material buried by U.S. strikes. Steve Witkoff has said a lot of things, blowing sunshine up the skirts of most people. I don't think this is going to go anywhere. I think the only way to, especially now, the only way to open the Strait of Hormuz is by force. And I don't agree with putting troops on the ground there, but I think keep sailing the ships through, and if any commercial ship is struck, I think full-blown attack on Iran. So devastating that it'll take them 100 years to rebuild. Zero hedge. Story number 7, Hormuz ship traffic rebounds to highest level since the start of Iran war. Iran renews restrictions. So they just added this to the headline. Oil prices are on track to close lower for the week, but they were up today. Futures were down. Gold was down. Washington Times. Story number 8, week-long negotiations are on hold. Vance's push to get Iran talks started hits early bump. The U.S. push to quickly begin high-stakes talks with Iran hit a snag just days before the signing of an agreement that opens a 60-day window for negotiations on Iran's nuclear program and getting oil traffic moving through the Strait of Hormuz back to pre-war levels. They said again, they tried to get all the ships out within this 16-hour period. It didn't really happen because the ships that were, and the insurance companies that underwrite them, were skeptical, and they missed their window because now they're saying, Iran's saying they're going to close the strait again because of what's happening in Lebanon. That's not even part of the deal. The Iranians added that the last minute. Article with the Washington Times continues by saying the announcement followed a report from Al Mayadeen, a pan-Arab satellite channel that is politically allied with the Iranian-backed Lebanese militant group Hezbollah, that Iran was delaying sending its delegation to Switzerland over Israel's ongoing military campaign in Lebanon. It's not about Lebanon, and Iran wants to include Lebanon. We didn't include proxies. We took that off the table, and they wanted to add it back in. That's not negotiating in good faith. Not that the Iranians ever negotiated in good faith. I say keep sending the commercial shipping through, and if they want to fire at commercial shipping, I don't know what's going on with the blockade. My understanding is that oil ships were allowed to go through. Cargo ships from China were not allowed to go through because of what I spoke about yesterday, which is the fear of Iran getting supplied with sophisticated supersonic anti-ship missiles, which have a longer range than a few hundred miles. If the most sophisticated are ranges over 1,000 miles, which could strike the U.S. fleet in the Arabian Sea. One American News story number 9, Iran Supreme Leader breaks silence on new U.S.-Iran MOU. We don't even know if this is from him, but this is the statement. As you've been informed, a memorandum of understanding was signed between the presidents of Iran and America. In the course of reaching this stage, the officials in charge, out of sincere concern and goodwill, made extensive efforts. And of course, it was the American president who, out of desperation, used all kinds of leverage to bring this about. Out of the commitment that was that the esteemed president, as the head of the Supreme National Security Council, gave to me on his own behalf and on behalf of other members regarding the safeguarding of the rights of the Iranian nation and the resistance front, and his explicit acceptance of the responsibility granted by my permission. He also explicitly stated that if American side seeks to make excessive demands, the President's Security Council of Iran, will not submit to them. Bomb. They always have this air of arrogance, and I think that they need to be subdued. And I'm not one for war. I wasn't a supporter of this action, this policy decision at all. I wasn't supportive of it at all. But now we're in it, and I hate the Iranians because they always dick around like this. It's just, and I said many weeks ago that the cease of hostilities should never have happened. The bombing should have continued. Maybe they ran out of targets. Who knows? I know getting ships through, but getting to this point, they were still, weeks and weeks after we stopped the bombing, for weeks and weeks, the Iranians were still shooting at ships. People like this only buckle under force to buckle. They're never going to agree to anything. They're never going to agree to any demands. So, what is the military plan going forward? Who knows? Like I said, if they get these anti-ship missiles in, and then the aircraft carriers are pushed out of strike range, then what are you going to do? You can't fly hundreds of sorties out of Saudi Arabia. Just the news story number 10, Iranian resistance leader, former national security aide, praised Trump's deal with Iran. It's not much of a deal. Alireza Jafarzadeh, an Iranian dissident and deputy director of the Washington office of the National Council of Resistance of Iran, said Thursday he's looking at the bigger picture amid criticisms of the deal, which to him is that any opportunity to end all hostilities should be welcome. The current regime has used the war as a shield to protect itself against an uprising. He believes the real unchanging war is one between the regime and the people of Iran. He only said the way to end the current regime is through the Iranian people, which is responsibility of the organized resistance and the people of Iran. I think we should be arming Iranian resistance, whether it's the Kurds or whatever, massing forces in the desert, establishing a no-fly zone over Iran, just like we did in Iraq, so they can't use air power to suppress an uprising. Zero hedge, futures, gold slide, oil jumps after Iran peace talks delayed. There's the Brent crude graph. So it pitched up a little bit after a steady decline. One American News federal judge, moving on to the next story. And before I do that, I just want to say, is that it's important to keep the strait open. That's why I said we need to start defying Iran. And if oil tankers need to be sunk, I don't know. Warships is another thing. The fact is that European allies are not sailing to the defense of this. And France's relationship with Iran is just ridiculous. You know, this regime, and I have nothing against Shia Islam or Islam. It just the belligerents, whether it's North Korea or Iran or any states like that, who just said, you know, if you don't do what we say, it's really terrorism. So if you don't do what we say, we're going to kill or destroy non-combatants. You know, that's all they did in Israel is lob rockets at cities. You know, the only one who's really killing combatants is Hamas and Hezbollah. They're the ones that are killing Israeli soldiers. Iran hasn't really had the opportunity to kill. They killed some Americans. But that's why we agreed to get out of the Middle East, because we're at bases, we're targets from missiles. I don't know. Like I said, it's a can of worms that shouldn't have been opened. One American News federal judge narrows legal challenges to Trump's mail-in voting order. This is story number 12. Ruling that Democrat-led states and voting rights groups can only advance challenges aimed at blocking the policy's impact on the upcoming 2026 midterm elections. However, the Trump administration wanted total dismissal, and I agree. Nonetheless, Judge Talwani simultaneously limited the litigation by dismissing all claims concerning elections beyond 2026, finding that because federal agencies are still working out how to implement the policy, the long-term impact remains too speculative and ripe for future courts to handle later. Mail-in ballot is an avenue for fraud. Sorry. It's just absentee ballot is a different thing. You're requesting the ballot, you're proving who you are, and the ballot is sent out to you. We're not sending out ballots to every registered voter, even if they haven't been confirmed. These voter rolls we've known are ripe with people that have moved, dead people. I shouldn't say ripe, I should say replete. And with people that aren't legitimate voters. So, and the reason for this is to allow fraud. The reason for mail-in or mail-out balloting is so during the counting you can ship in ballots, as long as you don't exceed the number of registered, and that's why they have to keep the number of registered voters high, because then they could go all the way up to that amount and not passed. It's an amazing, in a primary, 98% turnout. Just amazing. How does that happen? You could see how we're, empowering the voters. See, look at all these people that are participating. They're not participating. It's a scam. The directive seeks to restructure the mechanics of American voting by ordering the Department of Homeland Security to compile database-derived lists of confirmed U.S. citizens and transmit them to states. The order instructs the U.S. Postal Service to only deliver mail-in ballots to voters explicitly verified on those federal approved lists. Right? There's no vetting of the lists. And Harmeet Dillon has been after all the states, and the blue states just aren't complying. Why? Is because it's a scheme. I just mentioned. Just the news story number 13. Trump warns Utah against expanded mail-in voting. President Donald Trump on Thursday warned Utah against moving to an expanded mail-in voting system due to the potential for fraud in its elections. Indeed. It seems as though the great state of Utah, which I won each time and handily, is going to all mail-in ballot format of Colorado and the rest. That always had left as soon as the move is made. We should stop Utah from doing this. All mail-in ballots dishonestly handled are a big advantage for Democrats whose only road to victory because their policies are so insane. This is cheating. Post-millennial story number 14, Pakistani Dem donor arrested for $38 million adult daycare Medicaid scam in New York City. The scam allegedly ran from 2019 to 2025. Perez Zedekwi, 78, is taken into custody Monday along with 7 others alleged co-conspirators in the scam. According to New York Post, Zedekwi, as well as others, is alleged to have been running a Medicaid kickback and false billing fraud operation with 2 adult daycares in Brooklyn, the APNA Adult Daycare and Ashina Adult Social Adult Daycare. The scam allegedly ran since 2019, where adults were signed up for daycares who they rarely or never attended and would also get a cut of the Medicaid payments. That's the kickback. The same thing was going on in Minneapolis with the Somali daycares. Marketers are going around looking for the Medicaid card. They stop people on the street at bus stops. They go into the doctor's offices. They go into NYCHA, government housing, where they know people are low income. They ask, do you have a Medicaid card? And then they ask those people to participate in the scheme. People are cheating all over the place, especially liberals. And they always justify it with some higher ideal. Voters are being disenfranchised. Low-income people need to get money by hook or by crook. So this is one of the ways. Fox News, ICE urges. And I also want to go back to that last story. Also, that the headline mentioned that this guy, Siddiqui, was a big Democrat donor. They're all in on the scheme. Fox News, story number 15, ICE urges New York not to release Salvadoran national accused of raping 16-year-old girl on Long Island. I think it was an attempted rape. Aureliano Antonio Melendez Reyes entered the U.S. illegally and was ordered removed by an immigration judge in 1998, and he's still fucking here. Authorities said Reyes repeatedly approached the girl and asked for her phone number. After he refused, he allegedly forced her into an alley and sexually assaulted her. Tried to rape her, I believe. The girl was eventually able to break free and called 911 while running from Reyes, who was allegedly chasing her. Doesn't say how old this guy is, but he's been in the cut. He was ordered deported in 1998. That's 27 years ago, so he's got to be well into his 50s. Post-millennial wanted. Seattle area police seek the identity of suspect after 80-year-old ICE supporter assaulted. The suspect, who was wearing an anti-fascism shirt, had been accused of punching an elderly victim several times outside the Starbucks. Victim, who wished to remain anonymous, told the Highline Journal that he arrived at the anti-ICE protests to peacefully express his support for ICE agents when he found himself surrounded by protesters, which he was allegedly shouted out, thrown to the ground, and repeatedly punched. Because that's what Democrats and liberals do. If you don't agree with them, they intimidate you, they assault you, and they think they're in the right. They take some moral high ground, like I expressed earlier. It doesn't matter if what we're doing is illegal. It's for a higher cause or a higher ideal or whatever. It's criminality, mostly. And the Democrats just try to provide a justification for doing so. The demonstration was promoted online by Des Moines Indivisible, a progressive organization that urges members to arrive with signs reading, ICE kidnapped your neighbor here. And before I go on to this Federalist article, because Father's Day is coming up, just another note on that. other thing is that all these groups, Des Moines Indivisible, all these groups are supported by given funded by Act Blue, which takes foreign money, probably from China, and that looks uh, indivisible. It's just the opposite. All these Democratic groups are opposite of what they claim to be. Indivisible, no, they're promoting divisiveness. As I say often enough, is ICE is performing legitimate federal law enforcement actions. It's just the Democrats told you that it's wrong or terrorism or whatever, unlawful, but it isn't. What these people are doing are not their free speech. They have free speech to go say they're against ICE. That's fine. You go out there with your placards and your megaphone. I'm all for that. But if someone comes to counter protest, you can't throw them to the ground and beat them. Federalist, the most effective social program is being a good dad. There's one prevailing factor that actually predicts poverty, crime, academic failure, and dependence on government: growing up without a father in the home. We all know this. Obama said children who grow up without a father are roughly 5 times more likely to live in poverty and commit crime. They are 9 times more likely to drop out of school, 20 times more likely to end up in prison. They are more likely to have behavioral problems or run away from home or become teenage parents themselves. And the foundations of our community are weaker because of it. And the author here says, when socialism in Venezuela destroyed our family business, our opportunities, and nearly everything we spent years building, my father taught me perseverance and the importance of finding solutions. The point is having a strong person in the home is most important, and particularly when you're in the home, when you're a parent, to teach children things. I learned more from my parents than I ever did in school because my parents were concerned with my well-being and my future. And usually young parents, or obviously absentee parents, aren't concerned with their children and their future and what their children might know or grow up to be or whatever. And one of the things to teach your children is not to believe everything people say, especially from the left. The Federalist, story number 18, why Juneteenth proves the 1619 Project crowd wrong. And this is typical of Democrats. The Union's recapture of Texas marks slavery's practical let me just get to the point. Is that Juneteenth and the 1619 Project are incompatible, believing both. It's cognitive dissonance. You can't believe both things. Either the United States was built on slavery, which it wasn't. Slavery existed, but it wasn't built on slavery. And the claim that the slaves built America at its founding just wasn't true. First of all, during the Revolutionary War, the majority of industrialized slavery for textiles, cotton farming, particularly in the South, wasn't really ramped up. It had just started, particularly in the South, and it was particularly for textiles, right? That kind of chattel slavery didn't necessarily, industrial scale wasn't happening in the North. Farms were mostly tended with the help of people that might have had house slaves that work in the field, but not on the industrial scale that was happening in the South. Particularly because the settlers of the South didn't want to work in the fields. There was, of course, the problem with mosquitoes, malaria, and stuff like that. And so, plus the brutal heat of the South kept the plantation owners, and you couldn't get enough white labor down there to farm. So that's the whole reason. I'm not condoning that by any way, but what I'm saying is that the timeline doesn't fit. Slavery, the founding of America or 1619 Project is a falsehood. Thus, the Union recapture of Texas marks slavery's practical extinction in America, and the anniversary has long been celebrated by some Black Americans as Emancipation Day, Jubilee, or Juneteenth. 1619 Project, widely debunked New York Times series, claims that protecting slavery motivated the American Revolution. Not true. Founding and ridiculously the very Constitution that Frederick Douglass called a glorious liberty document. Parents of all races and creeds rebelled as these ideas meant to undermine our basic freedoms by association with slavery were introduced into classrooms, but Juneteenth, properly understood, is completely incompatible with 1619 Project worldview. Indeed. This new holiday commemorates the successful effort to hold the Union together, and for the last 2 years of the Civil War and slavery, Abraham Lincoln framed this opposition to slavery in terms of the founding, and this formulation found wide electoral support in both 1860 and 1864. Even more tellingly, pro-slavery radicals and Confederate leaders did not embrace our supposedly racist founding. Instead, they openly disdain the founding fathers, and it goes on to say, John Calhoun, South Carolina statesman who nearly started the Civil War 30 years early, said the Declaration of Independence's claim that all men are created equal was an error. Called Jefferson's belief in universal freedom to take an utterly false view of the subordinate relation of the black to the white race in the South. According to Calhoun, the American founding was not only protecting slavery, was not about protecting slavery. It was not even compatible with slavery. Its underlying principles were antagonistic to slavery and would eventually threaten the institution. He was right about that. Right? Not to mention that America didn't invent slavery. Slavery had existed forever, since the beginning of man, until Britain and then America abolished it. BJ Media, Why Do Democrats Hate America? Part 2. Well, you know why? 30% of Democrats say they're extremely proud or very proud to be American compared to roughly 90% of Republicans. Why is that? It's the Howard Zinn crowd, and I'm not my country right or wrong. So I'm not part of that nationalistic bend. It's okay to criticize your nation, but this sort of thing that America's ideal, the very founding document, is somehow poisoned and it's better other places, it really isn't. It isn't at all. We have a lot of freedoms here that even if they once existed in other nations, are now being rolled back. We definitely have a problem with race, but it goes both ways, right? Good people on both sides. It goes both ways. They're fervent haters. The point of America being a melting pot is a good point, right? But you have to adopt or assimilate to America. America means I have freedoms, your freedoms. And my freedoms stop where your freedoms begin. And that idea breeds mutual respect. You can do what you want to do within the confines of the law. I can do what I want to do within the confines of the law. I don't have to agree with your opinion. I just have to agree with your right to express it. That's not the way the modern left is. The progressives now, the postmodernists, don't want to engage in any sort of debate. And like that 80-year-old person who was beaten down because they went to express their opinion. And they were beaten for it by brown shirts. Yes, I say brown shirts. And people have said, no, brown shirts were the fascists. Brown shirts were the National Socialists. It was really the European battle was between two different types of socialism. National socialism, which retains national sovereignty, and international socialism, which was communism. Federalist, story number 19, exclusive redistricting initiative calls on pathetic Georgia GOP to redraw affirmative action map. So the Georgia GOP, I don't know what they're hiding. They're circling the wagons because they are the neocon. They're the neocon ideal. They are the Democrats in sheep's clothing because they are not becoming more populist. They're circling the wagons around their strange type of establishment republicanism, which doesn't want to be infiltrated by populism. And it leads to the question, why? Speaker John Burns looked pretty shameless in announcing Republicans won't take up redistricting in special session. So if you don't know what the redistricting is about, so Democrats for years have been redistricting, and both parties do it, but you're supposed to be doing it on the basis of the electorate, their voting preferences. But the Democrats were working on the assumption that all blacks vote Democrat, and most do, but most is not all. However, you can't do that, according to the Supreme Court. You can't assume that blacks vote Democrat, because then if you're redistricting on the basis of race, that's illegal. And that's exactly what they were doing. You would have to prove that your redistricting is including Democrats only and not just on the basis of race. That's the double-edged sword. They wanted, the black community wanted anti-discrimination laws, but that cuts both ways. Story number 20, National Review, the strange plot to attack Trump's UFC spectacle. I didn't want to get too much into that, but there are many questions about who was conspiring and to do what and how. They really didn't have the wherewithal to carry out this attack. They had a couple guns and the guy got body armor, whatever. But the problem was, and I said this, they were being goaded by online agents, operatives, because their heads were filled with a variety of different boogeymen, which also serves the government, right? So you have to say, it's like, look, these people, they hate the Jews, they hate the government, you know, they hate the Constitution. I wanted to point out here is that one of the ringleaders was spent increasingly concerning amounts of time inhabiting online groups, chatting with people claiming to be ex-military and Christian-based. I don't know, what do they mean by Christian-based? But right there, you're talking about sock puppets. Like I said, these young people, these kids, basically, they're going to show up for the attack, and mysteriously, their ex-military handlers online, the sock puppets or AI or whatever it is, mysteriously won't be there. And then it'll be labeled lone wolf. One of the targets is an obscure individual that no one even knows about. Just the News has the headline. Whistleblower lawyer was targeted in UFC terror plot. FBI still trying to figure out why. Because he was an enemy of the state, and it was the state that actually was organizing this. Whistleblower lawyer was stunned to find out that he was listed on as a target in the UFC 250 event terror plot foiled by the Secret Service and the FBI. Tristan Levitt, who is president of the Empower Oversight, a group of lawyers who represent whistleblowers and West Virginia state delegate, told Just the News on Wednesday that his guess as to why he was targeted was because he took a 9-day trip to Israel in November, a few weeks after the ceasefire in Gaza. A 23-person group, varying anti-government ideologies, anti-Semitism, and Satan conspiracy theories. So all the things that we constantly are pushing, right? These kids happen to glom on, and they're not even, their messages weren't coherent, and they were receiving all these messages from these mysterious ex-military people. You read something about, satanic ring, that's what they believe. But why is this guy in there, right? Tristan Levitt. No one's ever heard of him. How would he be a target by these 20-something know-nothings? Story number 22 here, just the news. Years after Pulitzer Prize, New York Times gets Russia collusion story wrong once again. So they double down, as all liberals do. Oh, shit. Hold on a second. Sorry about that. In an article published this week in the New York Times, Twice claimed President Donald Trump had no basis to claim that the federal government under former President Barack Obama spied on him during the 2016 election or abused surveillance powers, despite a large body of public evidence showing both things happened. Of course, they doubled down. President also had ample evidence that the FBI abused surveillance rules under Obama, FISA, including a lengthy Inspector General report from the Department of Justice released in 2019. It was a statement by the DOJ admitting some of the surveillance was unlawful. Of course it was, and it was obtained unlawfully. The warrants were through FISA. In a response to Just the News Inquiry, the Times said it's reporting on the challenges to reauthorize FISA Section 702 presents readers with a clear and factual picture. No, it doesn't. Now, FISA is a secret tribunal. It's a secret court. And as John F. Kennedy says, we as Americans abhor such things as secret tribunals. So we shouldn't have it. The FISA means Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Act. Supposed to be on foreign individuals. But the foreign individuals talking with people within the country, U.S. citizens, I don't care about U.S. residents, I care about U.S. citizens. And in the case of Obama, use these powers to spy on the opposition party to try to thwart their campaign. Totally fucking illegal and repugnant in this country. That's a third world tactic. This week, the Times claimed Trump had no evidence that he was spied on during his 2016 campaign. The Times won a Pulitzer Prize for its flawed coverage and has previously stood by its reporting. Trump has sued the Pulitzer Prize board for his standing by the award. And if you don't remember, on inauguration day of his first term, the New York Times had a front page article that said that Trump was wiretapped. Trump campaign wiretapped. Well, that's not true, A, because no one is wiretapped. They don't use that technology anymore. They were surveilled. But the New York Times was reporting on it itself. And they said it was justified, and the ensuing investigation made it perfectly clear that the FBI and some lawyer took the fall for misrepresenting the evidence to the judge who granted. The judge wasn't at fault. The FBI lied about what was going on. Carter Page was not a Russian asset. I mean, come on. He was actually a counterintelligence operative for the CIA. Fucked up. People in the intelligence world are fucked up. But they even said, even Comey admitted that when they interviewed General Flynn, Oh, we thought they'd be unguarded. We just sent a couple guys over there. Don't worry. We just got a few questions for you. And so they misrepresented the scope of the investigation, and General Flynn they got him on a false statement. They baited him basically into making a false statement to get him out, because the establishment was most worried about General Flynn, because General Flynn, who is the tip of the spear as far as our movement is concerned about exposing the real conspiracies, not theories, real conspiracies. He was the real spear with intelligence background, intelligence and military background. So him and Trump together, and you throw Bannon in there for good measure, we would have turned this country around in a matter of months. And that's undermining the establishment. And we're doing it. We're doing it. Mark my words, we're doing it. We could go on a success rant for hours here, pointing out all the things that were done. And to the intelligence community, like USAID and so forth and so on. Next article here from Just the News, story number 23. Gabbard says on last day is DNI releasing never-before-seen docs linking Fauci, tax money in Wuhan. This is already stuff we know. If you're in the know, you know. Never-before-seen communications and documents exposing how Dr. Anthony Fauci provided millions in U.S. taxpayer dollars to fund dangerous gain-of-function research in Wuhan lab in China. As you all know, or if you don't know, the actual precursor for COVID-19 was developed at Chapel Hill in North Carolina, was shipped to corresponding labs, one of them in Winnipeg, Canada, where there was a large contingent of Chinese agents there who subsequently stole the virus, which then they additionally modified with U.S. funding and oversight by Fauci, and of course, money went to nonprofits that went to Wuhan and whatever. But with oversight from Barrick and others in Wuhan that produced then COVID-19, but it wasn't the first coronavirus that was manipulated through gain of function to be A, more contagious, B, have more morbidity. I don't want to say more lethality. Yes, more lethality, but more morbidity. So it's shit we already know. And I'm with Rand Paul. I mean, that fucker Fauci should be strung up by the yardarm, put in prison. We don't do gain of function. I was following the gain of function story for a decade. How dangerous it was, because if any of these things that they're working on ever leaked out, it'd be the end of humanity. That's why we know this was a purposeful release, because it was billed for us in the know. It was billed as, yeah, it's the deadly disease that leaked out of a BSL-4 lab. It's going to kill everybody. That was the narrative. But it wasn't. It was an attenuated version, which wasn't that lethal, that could cause breathing distress, SARS. And then as soon as you get people hooked up to the, not the nebulizer, intubator, that you could kill them that way. Because the last thing you want to do when people have lung inflammation is pump air into the inflamed lungs. We found out that steroid use to reduce the inflammation was the best way. I mean, you want to put people on oxygen. That's something completely different. But pumping oxygen through an intubator, making them breathe, basically blowing out their lungs was a deadly endeavor. And what did the governor of New York? We need more intubators. And where did the most people die? New York. Fox News, weight loss drugs like Ozempic ears. Weight loss drugs linked to Ozempic ears and other cosmetic complaints. From Fox News, story number 24. Surgeons say dramatic fat loss from GLP-1 drugs is leaving patients with sagging skin across the body. We've gone down this road before. It's the same thing with bariatric surgeries, is that your body is not getting the calories it's used to, and you end up with giant head, little body syndrome. Um, no, I don't think any of this is healthy. The best way to lose weight is to diet and exercise. The main reasoning, the main logic behind dieting is calories burned and calories consumed. So if you're burning more calories than you consume, you'll lose weight, right? Uh, so the object is to burn more calories, but if you start when you start an exercise regime, you should start it before your diet. Here's the reasoning: is because your body has a emergency mechanism. If you deprive it of calories suddenly, it will do everything it can to maintain the fat, the weight. So you should ramp up your calorie burn, the amount of calories you use, and then change your diet. Again, on a slow ramp. And that way you don't shock your body. So when you first start an exercise regime, you're going to find out that you're not losing weight. And that's when most people go, it's not working. Because your body says all of a sudden you're using more calories, that it fights to keep the stores. It's just a natural thing. And so with these drugs, it kind of fools your body into shedding weight. I don't think it's healthy. If you're obese, that's another thing. It's, maintaining your weight is going to ruin your health. Another thing. But I don't trust pharmaceuticals, whether they're proven or not. So the mainstream media is hooked onto the Wall Street Journal article, or was it Wall Street Journal article? No, it was Wired. Hollywood Reporter, a Hollywood name surface in Peter Thiel-backed invite-only society ranks of his group dialogue appear to include several prominent figures in media entertainment who are put in the same room as C-suite execs and political titans during closed-door annual retreats. The group is planning an expansion. It's like Bilderberg or the Bohemian Grove thing. It's elites get together and discuss agendas. So money makes things happen. And so they all want to be on the same page, basically rowing in the same direction as to where to take civilization. People find this creepy. So do I. I don't think they should do that. But once you're in a position of power, you look at it as a responsibility to take civilization in a certain direction, because you're going to affect that trajectory given your power no matter what you do. So why don't we all be in a cohesive way, do something that's going to go here? And that's where we unveil the agenda. So the agenda is not, why do you think Peter Thiel is worried about AI? AI isn't the Antichrist. The people that are trying to stop AI is the Antichrist. What? AI is the Antichrist. And you'll see why. If you study scripture and you see what AI is going to become, it'll be lauded as a god. And then everybody will be so enamored listening to the Antichrist. The beast. The beast is something different. The beast isn't the Antichrist. The beast is humanity. It's herd mentality. That's what the beast means. It's when man behaves and thinks like an animal. That's what the beast is. And it's in all of us. We have that prehistoric in our name. One American News, story number 26, Bexar County Sheriff's Office and United States Secret Service sting leads to 14 predator arrests. In tandem with the U.S. Secret Service, has successfully executed coordinated multi-month undercover sting, resulting in the arrest of 14 accused predators and individuals soliciting prostitution from minors. Suspects operate as wolves in sheep's clothing, capitalizing on positions of authority or trust to embed themselves with communities while maintaining hidden double lives. We saw this with teachers and other people that have access to children. In one notable arrest, authorities apprehended a suspect who had traveled from outside the country with illicit narcotics, emergency contraception, and a computer that was later found to contain evidence of child sex abuse material. Another arrest involved a local probationary first responder who was immediately terminated from his position following custody. These victims in these cases were fictional children created by undercover officers, sock puppets. Yep. Happens. Fox News, story number 27, fans call foul on MLB, National Baseball League. After league warns players over Bible verses on pride caps. Major League Baseball, yep. Texas Rangers faith and family night attendees weigh in on MLB controversy. When you take sexual perversion and, like I said, agree to disagree, agree for you to have your opinion and your lifestyle, it's not illegal, whatever. But it's tolerance, then it's acceptance, and then you asked us to promote it, and that's what they do, making the players wear the rainbow flag on the hat. You're asking players who may or not believe in this lifestyle or may abhorrently reject it because of their protected religious proclivity, make them promote it, not accept it, not tolerate it. You make them promote it. And there lies the rub. And I sandwiched this in, that story in with this Federalist article and the one before about from One American News about the sting for child rape, because homosexuality, that's not illegal. I mean, a lot of the states are getting rid of their sodomy laws, which I think they should. However, it's a sexual perversion. And I don't really mean that in a derogatory sense. I just mean that as sex is meant to procreate. And so if you're pumping your semen into somebody's ass, that you're not going to make a baby that way. I don't care. Or fellatio or whatever is like, that's a sexual perversion because sex was meant to procreate. So if you're not having heterosexual sex, vaginal sex, I guess you would call it, right? Straight sex. Anything outside of that is a perversion. And so obviously pedophilia is a perversion of sorts also, whether it's heterosexual or not. Laws protecting the innocence of children, because a lot of it is not about, hey, I'm 18 or 19 or 20 or 40 for that matter, or live in a different country and I have a child bride. Not that I agree with that or anything. It's the legality of it. But why would you seek out someone that young? If you're older, it becomes a little bit of a perversion. And that's where the real disgusting pedophilia comes about. But this next story is about, in other cultures, they have child sex brides, arranged marriages, whatever. But that's not what this is. The Federalist. The mass rape of British girls by Pakistani immigrants is an act of war. The problem is not ultimately about sexual abuse, but about mass immigration from non-European countries who, the people of these countries, believe that it's okay that unaccompanied girls, that's why in Muslim countries you don't have women going out alone. that if young girls are out alone, that they're subject to harassment and grooming. So the 2026 Rape Gang Inquiry Report is one of the most thorough attempts yet to document the scale of rape and trafficking of white British girls within the UK at the hands of predominantly Pakistani Muslim men. Quoting from the report, organized networks of perpetrators built coordinated operations that transported victims between locations, supplied them with drugs and alcohol, recorded abuse for distribution and blackmail, and passed girls between multiple adult men. These crimes have been committed for decades, since the 1950s, by Pakistanis in particular, and have affected every region of our nation, that's the UK. The scale of the crimes committed is staggering. It has been previously established that at the very least, 250,000 young white girls have been subjected to repeated rape, gang rape, trafficking, torture, pregnancy, forced Islamic conversion, and lifelong trauma. The true number is probably higher. Staggering. You want to refute that? Cool. I'd like to get to the truth on the matter, and the truth is usually somewhere in between, but I want to see all the politicians do in the UK say, that's not true. All right, how is it not true? We know this goes on time and time again. Just yesterday, I saw 5 different videos of Muslim men trying to kidnap, really, young girls, like more than half their age, young girls, some as young as 8, leading them away forcefully, obviously, to rape them. And in some instances in the videos, the girls were rescued, and then they were asked, do you want to go with this man? And they're like, no, no, no. He was forcing me to go with him. All right, some tech news. Zero Hedge. Modern wars cannot be won without kamikaze drones. Paris Defense Show makes that clear. The war in Ukraine and the conflict in the Middle East has accelerated this defense shift, demonstrating how low-cost drones, autonomous systems, and robotic platforms are increasingly dominating the battlefield and forcing legacy defense primes to adapt their portfolios at lightning speed. Presence of drones, missiles, and counter-drone solutions are ubiquitous. Incumbent platforms and kits, hardware derivative of defense tech players. All right. How do we do? I think it went a little bit long. Thanks for joining me today. Don't forget to engage the channel, like, subscribe, leave a comment, share the podcast. An hour and 7 minutes, so we're kind of on schedule there. I appreciate you joining me. I'm here every day, Monday through Friday, 10 a.m., live on Rumble, YouTube, Facebook, etc. X. Don't forget you're under attack psychologically and biologically, so stay hip to that trick. Join me also on social media. Get Our Minds. Truth Social, Substack. Have a great weekend. Beautiful summer weekend coming up. I will see you Monday. Respect.
I'm Donald Trump, and I approve this message. This is all a conspiracy. Don't you know that it's a conspiracy?
The New World Order.
Less than 3% of you people read books.